Welcome to the Audrey Dahlgren Show. Get ready. We're going on athletic adventures all over the great state of Michigan. And the show begins now. Here's your host, Audrey Dahlgren.
Hello, happy Thursday, everybody. How are we feeling out there? Alex, how you been?
I'm good. How about you, Aud?
Oh, good. Just running around like a crazy lady, but everything is fantastic. As always, this is the hashtag Throwback Thursday show, and it's rather fitting for a couple of reasons, which more so towards the second half of the show, which we're going to get into when it comes to Michigan State's football team. There's a lot of fun stuff that we're going to delve into, obviously, with them playing Miami this Saturday at high noon in Miami. But first, we're going to start the show off with our high school football teams, more specifically, Holt's coach, Chad Fulk. He is joining us. He's actually had an opportunity to get out of class for a little bit and hang out with us and chat for a second, so I really appreciate that. Chad, how are you doing today?
Good. I'm ditching class for just a second. Not totally ditching. I got an eye as they work on some grass in there,
Right. Maybe I shouldn't have put that over the air. But anyway, thanks for coming on. Like I said, again, this is a really big week for you and your football team. You guys have the opportunity to host DeWitt this Friday night, which is tomorrow. And number one, just what are you looking forward to the most when it comes to being able to play this game against the Panthers?
Yeah, it's just fun being there. It's one of those things where you walk into the stadium and there's people there, and you got the atmosphere of drums playing, food trucks, and two good teams getting ready to play. That's why people play sports, is to be in big games, and this is one of those big games for us. It doesn't get any bigger than DeWitt. As much success as they've had over so many years, and this is one of those biggest games on the calendar. So we're just excited to be a part of something bigger than us.
What have you guys been doing, Chad, in practice this week to prepare for a team like DeWitt? Because a part of it, I would imagine, is that, you know what they're working with offensively. And so let's start there on the offensive side of it. What have you guys really been honing in on this week in practice when it comes to getting ready for them?
Well, they're so tough. And Tyler Holt's there is one of the best high school QBs I've ever seen. And, in 27 years of being around here, he's pretty special. So, we're telling our kids that just when you think that the receiver's far enough downfield, he's not. He's still going to get the ball to him somehow. He just has an arm that can send it forever. And so you really just worry about him being able to stay comfortable in the pocket. And, we've got to get pressure on him somehow and contain him, not let him run, because he can run just as well as he throws. And his target down there is a pretty big kid too, And so if he does get it all the way down there, we've got some smaller DBs that try to defend this, giant that runs track speed all the way down the field, and you got to cover all 100 yards. So, just making sure that kids never quit on a play and are just so physical. That's something that we're, hang our hat on, is being physical, and so we got to try to match them in that area as well.
You guys also hang your hat, though, on having speed as well. So how will that be an advantage for you, or how can that work to your advantage come Friday?
That's not something we're used to saying out here, but
yeah,
we're, Kellen is a pretty fast kid, and all of our guys are just so much faster this year, but Kellen is pretty special with how fast he is. And, this week when we're focused on that, we've got a guy who I think is pretty fast coming down to make a tackle on Kellen, and Kellen makes one slight move, and he's outside him already. And, so having Kellen is special not only for us offensively, but in practice to try to defend him and simulate some of those kids. Not every year do you have anybody on your team that's pretty special like the other team has that you can simulate that. But having someone as fast as Kellen or, Jakari or any of our other guys, having those guys that can simulate the other team's speed and things like that really helps you prepare.
Absolutely. And you also have, for those listening, Kellen Reed, and Jakari Conway is who Coach Fulk is mentioning right there. And then Seneca Moore, though, too, his performance against Mason was one I think that really stood out a lot. He had a great performance against the Bulldogs in that Cedar Street rivalry game. 4 touchdowns, passing touchdowns, and 243 yards. So that was not a bad night for him.
Not at all. We've been so happy with his development this year. He was a kid who the last time he got to play in an actual game was his freshman year because of, our restrictions we had here in our district of, just playing our varsity sports only last year. And so he was up on the varsity to still play and get some sort of development, but it wasn't any of that game simulation stuff. And so, for a lot of our kids, that first game against Caledonia, who's a very good team, it's not only is it hot out, you're playing a good team, but there was fans there, and our kids weren't really used to that yet. They were used to those freshman and JV games where there's like 300 people, and then last year we could only have like 400 people. But when 7,500 people show up to watch a game, that kind of opens your eyes as you're a 15, 16-year-old kid, and so that was a good game for us to get used to that, all of the atmosphere and all those other elements that go into the game. And Seneca's just gotten better and better and better every week. And so we couldn't be more delighted on his progress.
What do you think, too, of the Blue, the CAAC Blue overall right now? Because I will say this, too. I don't know if a lot of people imagined that Grand Ledge would be the only undefeated team left in the Blue going into, well, they're undefeated on the season right now, but not sure a lot of people maybe anticipated that going into week 4. And so how do you view the CAAC Blue right now going into week 4 of the season?
It's usually so tough, but it's usually kind of top heavy, but this year it's so good all the way across. You've got all these teams that, the DeWitts and East Lansings, and, we like to be a part of that conversation as well, but they're good every single year. And Grand Ledge traditionally is part of that group, not just in our league, but around the state. When we have crossover games with other leagues that are pretty good leagues, we, sometimes you might struggle, but this year and last year, the Blue has been so strong and so competitive that it didn't matter which team was playing, whether it be, last year Everett didn't get to play, but, they're a team that can score on any play. Waverly, the same thing. There's so many teams in this league that prepare you for those, the postseason, that our teams from the Blue can have some pretty big runs late, if we can make it into the playoffs after beating each other up.
I know. It's unfortunate, that you guys have to kind of, waddle on each other a little bit when it comes to the regular season and sometimes even when it comes to districts. But that is an advantage, getting able to play each other. It does make for some good competition all throughout the year. And the other thing, too, when a lot of people were surprised that DeWitt was upset by Portland, what do you draw from that game in your preparation when going up against the Panthers? Or do you not draw anything from that game?
I do, and it's one of those things like, we experienced it in the 2000s, where we had not lost a league game in 4 years. And DeWitt has been, one of those teams. So there's kind of that aura or mystique of DeWitt, and so sometimes that can make people think about, be a little psychological before you play them. But with Portland, I think they've beaten them 3 out of 7 times or 3 out of 6 times in the last few years. And that mystique that other teams might feel isn't there in Portland. They just feel like, hey, we can do this. And so it doesn't really matter which guys are stepping up for Portland. They just know they can compete. And until other teams catch up to that idea, the other teams might struggle. And so that was one of the biggest challenges this week is, hey, we're not afraid of you guys. We're gonna stand here and we're gonna throw some punches with you, not literal punches, but we're gonna go at each other pretty hard and do those things that we need to win. But you learn that watching the teams like Portland, and when they've had success, you take those things that they've done and build on them in your own certain way.
What about your defense too, Chad? Because, we mentioned the speed and your skilled players, but you really like this defense that you have of yours. And how would you assess their progress through the first 3 games and essentially, yes, going into this game against DeWitt?
Yeah, I do. I do like our guys. They're fun.
Yeah, Fletcher is quite the character. Fletcher Smith.
He is, yeah. with his special hairdo he's got there. But he, all of them are so gifted. Our defensive line is one of the best defensive lines we've had in a long time. The last time I can think of as a unit we've had one like this is back in '95 when, they end up going pretty deep. But they're just so athletic across the defensive line and so strong that we're able to do some things creatively behind them because they're able to control the run with just those four guys. And then doing some special things with the backers, who is a seasoned group that is all seniors and have been around for a few years. They're a pretty good group. And then our defensive backs, we're looking at them, and we were arguing that they could possibly be the best set of defensive backs we've had in a while, And so we're just so happy with the defense. And that first game, it was another learning curve for all of them as well. And they kind of figured it out the next few weeks. And I think they're just going to get better and better the more we get into the blue and they get tested more each week.
It's hard, too, because obviously, you mentioned, the loss to Caledonia. Then you come and you put on a good performance against a tough Mason team. And then you go against Okemos last week, which was a shutout, 60-0. And so it's hard, though. How do you assess where you're at through three games? Because it's been a roller coaster, but the competition has been kind of not lopsided. Maybe lopsided is a good way to put it, but it's just been all over the board, essentially. So I guess how do you grasp where you are right now, especially coming off of that Okemos game?
Yeah, and that's the part that gets a little tough, because you don't necessarily know where you are at this particular moment. And, that might be that way every week, too. Dealing with 14 to 18-year-olds is always a little up and down every day. You don't know from 1 minute to the next minute what they might be feeling or how they're feeling about. So going week to week against different teams is obviously just as tricky. But, when you play that first game, you talk about who's going to make the least amount of mistakes is usually the one that wins that game. And usually you can throw some skill or other things out because there's some jitters and some young kids and things like that. But, I think we learned a ton that first game, especially playing against a really good Caledonia team. And then the second week, playing a very good Mason team. And I think we bounced back. And it's one of those things where our guys maybe coming into the year thought that they were maybe a little bit better than what they thought they were. And then you get your eyes open when you play somebody who thinks they're just as good as you are, and it kind of humbles you a little bit. And a lot of our guys, doesn't matter the year, we need a little humbling every once in a while, whether it's in the beginning of the year or the middle of the year. Most teams will start getting a little high on themselves, and they need that little humbling. And that's a really hard lesson to teach. But you usually will see those good teams bounce back after those humbling lessons. And so I think our guys learned that week 2 and realized that that's something that they have to do each week if they want to. Now, when you're playing a team that's a little bit, not as competitive, you got to keep remembering those times behind you. I think the best advice I ever got in my life was a kid told me that I needed to be like a shark. And I didn't know what he meant at that time, but he told me, he's like, you ever see a shark swim backwards or stop moving, but he's covered in scars. He remembers everything that happened to him before that hurt him, but he keeps moving forward and remembers that for the next time. And so, for us, that loss against Caledonia is just another scar on our side, and we'll remember that one. And so when we get to a time where we might need a little humbling, we can look back at that scar and remember that lesson.
Wow, should have had you on for the #Wednesday Wisdom Show, because that is an incredible mantra right there. That's awesome to hear. And it makes a lot of sense what you're speaking to. And I too want to ask you as well, have you been able to get the Cedar Street rivalry trophy fixed after the incident following the Mason game?
No, I have not yet. So it was funny. So our kids were so excited. I knew I had to be gentle in holding it because it's a pretty old trophy. But then, and I just got it fixed, and I handed it over to the kids, and they grabbed it by one of those little podiums there that's not very sturdy, and that part broke. And then a kid grabbed one of the actual figurines on it, and that broke off. So now I got to figure out how to get that on there. But my 4-year-old at home, when I had it sitting on the table and he saw the figurine, he's like, "Hey, can I this guy's broken off. Can I just play with him now? Can you be mine?
You're like, so, not quite yet. No.
No, not yet, buddy.
Well, Chad, I appreciate you taking some time to, talk with me about everything that's going on, especially this big game that you have coming up. If for sure, in your mind, I mean, would you say that this is a statement game for you guys if you were able to win this?
Absolutely. I mean, whenever you're playing a team like DeWitt that is known as being the man around here, then if you make that win, then you know you're for real. And so that definitely would be a statement for us. Luckily I was here around when we were considered something like that in the 2000s, where you realize you got a target on your back every night, and people are always looking for you, and maybe at your weakest points or whatever. And we just try to compete every night, and that's there's a level you're trying to get to each year, and this is those games where you get to actually see if you're at that level or if you still got a lot of work to do.
All right. Well, we'll be looking forward to it. Of course, we'll have the highlights of the coverage on the fifth quarter, and we'll see you soon, okay?
All right. Thank you.
All right. Have a good day, Chad. Bye.
Bye.
Yes, we have a lot of good games this Friday in the high school world that are coming up. Our big game is actually on the fifth quarter going to be Everett at Grand Ledge, just because Grand Ledge is 3-0 for the first time since 2015, and they have another opportunity to remain unbeaten. As we mentioned with talking with Chad they're the only team left in the blue that is unbeaten overall and in the conference. And so, like I mentioned, I don't know if a lot of people anticipated that going into the year. I think a lot of people, expected DeWitt to be undefeated at this point, even Holt at this point. And so that's why also, too, the DeWitt-Holt game is also going to be another really big game. We need to spread the love, too, as well when it comes to our big game on the fifth quarter. We featured DeWitt a couple times already. Mason and Holt was already a part of the big game also as well when they played each other in the Cedar Street rivalry game. So, yes, we got to spread the love. Also, another thing that I want to mention as well is our, on the Channel 6 side for Team of the Week tonight, we are going to be featuring Charlotte. Charlotte is off to an undefeated start for the first time since 2004, back to the Eddie Ostapo days. And so that's been a really long time for the Orioles. And Mike Sparks really likes what they are building in Charlotte and what they have going there. And that's the precedent that they want to put forward. And what they're shooting for is to get back to those days in the early 2000s when they were playing some really good football. And so, the week 4 of the high school football season should be a lot of fun, as always. And mentioning those statement games, when I was asking Chad if it was a statement game for them against DeWitt, Michigan State, also Michigan State's football team, approaching what probably is going to be somewhat of a statement game. And so we're going to take a quick little break, but when we come back, we're going to delve into everything that has happened this week, from Mel Tucker's press conference to Manny Diaz's press conference. The players spoke yesterday. It should be a lot of fun. Stay with us.
Microsoft is putting the password out to pasture, heading towards a passwordless future. The tech company will give users the option to access their accounts without using a password, and users can choose between downloading the Microsoft Authenticator app, a security key, a verification code sent to your phone or secondary email address, or Windows Hello, a biometric option that involves scanning your face, iris, or fingerprint. Microsoft says there are 579 password attacks every second, which is 18 billion annually. Fitbit is getting into the snore detection business. 9to5 Google says the smart wrist device company is rolling out a promised snore and noise detect feature that uses the microphone to tell if your phone logs at night. You'll need a premium subscription and keep your device well charged. Unicode 14 is out, releasing the latest set of universal emoji characters out into the universe. 112 new ones, most notably a pregnant man, a melting face, and a nest with eggs. Tech Report, Larry Olson, NBC News Radio.
NBC News Radio, I'm Michael Kastner. The Pentagon is not denying that top U.S. General Mark Milley privately called China in an attempt to avert war during the end of the Trump presidency. NBC's Kelly O'Donnell.
Republicans are saying Milley may have gone outside the chain of command and behind the back of an elected commander-in-chief, referring to President Trump.
The new book, Peril, due out next week, describes calls Joint Chiefs Chairman Milley made to his Chinese counterpart over fears that former President Trump might try to start a war in his final months in office to bolster his popularity. Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby said it's not unusual for a Joint Chiefs chairman to call counterparts in other countries. Milley reportedly ordered senior military officials not to take orders from anyone on the possible use of nuclear weapons unless he was involved. Pfizer's COVID booster restores the effectiveness of the vaccine to 95%. Matt Mattinson explains.
That's according to data from Pfizer submitted to the FDA during application for approval of the booster shot. It was reportedly collected during a study in Israel between July 1st and August 30th. There's no word from the FDA on their official stance regarding the need for a third dose. However, officials did point out a lack of verified data from Pfizer, noting one of the studies submitted wasn't from a clinical trial. I'm Matt Mattinson.
The first ever orbital space mission, made up of nothing but regular civilians, is underway high above the Earth. Jay Gray with more.
As the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket tears away from the launch pad at Kennedy Space Center.
Throttle up.
The Inspiration 4 mission launches a new era in space exploration.
The 4 people on board lifted off from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida Wednesday evening. They'll spend 3 days in the SpaceX Crew Dragon capsule, flying about 350 miles above the surface of the Earth. Stock futures little change before the opening bell. Michael Kastner, NBC News Radio.
It's been a great time to get hot for the Blue Jays as they improved to 13-2 in September with a 6-3 defeat of the Rays. Robbie Ray fanning 13 over 7 innings. He now leads the majors in strikeouts. Bo Bichette homered and drove in 5. Toronto remains tied for the wild card spots in the AL with the Yankees, who nipped the Orioles 4-3, and the Red Sox, who topped the Mariners 9-4-10. The Boston manager is Alex Cora.
Hopefully, this is the beginning of something great for us, and we can get hot swinging the bats, and we avoid the one-run games or the close ones.
The Giants' 9-game winning streak ended with a 9-6 loss to the Padres. Julio Urias won his 18th game as the Dodgers handled the Diamondbacks 5-3. Cowboys defensive end DeMarcus Lawrence reportedly to miss 6 to 8 weeks with a broken foot that he suffered in practice on Wednesday. And the Bucs have hired Lisa Byington as the team's new TV play-by-play announcer, the first woman to have that job for a major professional sports team. That's sports. Frank Garrity, NBC News Radio.
Welcome back to the Audrey Dahlgren Show.
You want to win, don't you? Well, I think I'd really rather try to beat him honestly.
The Spotlight Radio Network.
All right, as you guys know, it's Thursday. This is the hashtag Throwback Thursday show. And as I said at the beginning, I feel as though it's rather fitting, especially with Michigan State's football team getting ready to play Miami for the first time in 32 years. And so we're going to take a little trip down memory lane, I would say. 32 years is a long time. At least it feels that way, but it goes by so quickly. These two have not met on the gridiron since 1989. That's the last time the Spartans played the U. The game was in East Lansing, and the Spartans lost 26-20 to the Canes, who were ranked second in the country on that September day in EL. And there are a few members of Michigan State's, the current coaching staff, who played in that game for the green and white. Secondary coach Harlan Barnett is one of them, along with wide receivers coach Courtney Hawkins. And following practice yesterday, Hawkins was asked about the game and what he remembers from it. And after all these years, does the loss still eat at him?
Yeah, because we had them on the ropes, man. I mean, games like that, you're playing the number one team with all the hype that came in. I remember being a beautiful day at Spartan Stadium. The place was packed. It was absolutely electric in there. And we played. I mean, it was a tough game. It was a hard-hitting game. It was a lot of going back and forth. Everything that football's about, that game, that's one of the reasons that you play college football. That particular game was one of the reasons that college football was so great and so much fun when I played. And, we were very close, to knocking them off. But, I mean, they ended up pulling it out. It's what championship teams do, and great memory. I got a couple nods, I remember I took some guys deep that game, so, and we mixed it up, we blocked. And then, through my journey in the pros, we talked about it. I had some guys from Miami on the teams that I was on, and we had some great conversations about it. I mean, they knew they knew after they left here, they had to get an ice tub, like us. It was a hard-hitting football game, and it was fun to play in. And, 30-some years ago. Make me feel old, man.
Well, by no means does Hawkins even look old enough for that game to have been 32 years ago. And as they say, you're only as old as you feel. But Saturday is also just the 5th all-time meeting between MSU and Miami, and the Hurricanes lead the series 4-0. They've won all 4 meetings dating back to 1945. MSU fell in Miami in 1982, 1959, and 1945. So from that standpoint, MSU would like to get a victory. You got to get on the win column when it comes to playing a team at least once over a span of more than 50 years. But the Spartans, they also want to get this win right now because Miami is ranked. They're at number 24 this week in the AP Top 25 poll and are 1-1 in this young season. They lost their season opener to Alabama in the Chick-fil-A kickoff at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. And that game was in Atlanta, which, FYI, don't be surprised if sometime in the near future, Michigan State tries to be a part of this event.
Really?
Yes. Oh. It's something that Mel Tucker kind of wants to have discussions about. And so I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Michigan State kind of maybe try to get in a game or try to be in an event like that. But this past Saturday, Miami, they only beat App State in their home opener by 2 points, 25-23. And so I think this is a very winnable game for Michigan State, especially with Miami losing one of its better running backs, Don Chaney Jr., for the rest of the season due to injury. I just think that Michigan State's offense has a lot more firepower in week 3 of the season than Miami's. MSU has put up 80 points in its first 2 games this year, and a lot of that production is due to starting quarterback Peyton Thorne, who fully expects the Spartans' offense to be, pretty hot in Miami, just as hot as the temps. How do you like that, Alex?
No, I agree. I think, too, with Miami, it looks as though as they struggle a little bit against the run. I think this is a game that matches up pretty dang well for Michigan State in terms of their strengths and what Miami kind of struggles with. I think it kind of aligns pretty well. And, yeah, I think at the beginning of the season, most fans would pretty much peg this game as a loss. I think Miami had a lot of hype going into it. Obviously, they have a ton of talent on both sides of the field, but they're kind of looking like the typical Miami season kind of going off right now with, the embarrassment. It's kind of hard to say an embarrassment against Alabama because, Alabama can do that to just about anybody on any given day. So I kind of didn't take that too much. But the Appalachian State, struggling with them, barely sneaking out a win. It just kind of feels like that typical Miami going to kind of let down at some point, and this might be that big pivotal game. If they can beat Michigan State, maybe they turn the tides, but I think if they lose, that team could spiral out of control. And I think, like you said, them being ranked right now bodes well for Michigan State because if they lose, if Michigan State is able to beat them, I don't see Miami getting ranked anytime soon. I think that'll spiral out of control. But I think fans looking at this, and as much as they should, this is, like you said, a very winnable game. Michigan State's obviously impressed to this point, I think, beyond expectations for most fans, and Miami's kind of struggling a little bit. So, I think this is very winnable. I expect them to run the ball and assert themselves in that part of the game early on. But if the offensive line can play well, you can hold on to the football. I don't see any reason why they can't win this game. I feel really good about it.
Yeah, it is a winnable game. And you think about, too, just, going back to the production standpoint from an offensive standpoint, thinking about how Peyton Thorne is playing right now, he looks really good, especially his connection that he has with Jaden Reed, which everybody following the Youngstown State game, they went back to the middle school connection and how they've been together for a long time. But also at the same time, too, he had a career high 4 touchdowns in that game against the Penguins. He also had a rushing touchdown. And, the thing that amazes me, or the thing that I think people need to keep taking note of, is that every game so far in the first 2 games, some player from Michigan State has broken a record from an offensive standpoint. So Kenneth Walker obviously did it in the opener multiple different records there that he was able to break against Northwestern. And then this last Saturday, you have, Thorne. It's been since, I believe, it wasn't Kirk Cousins. Oh, no, it was Brian Lewerke in 2017. That's the last time Michigan State has had a quarterback throw for 4 touchdowns in a game. So that's one thing. They also, the connection that they had, the 85-yard touchdown was a career long for both of them, for Peyton Thorne and Jaden Reed. And then on top of that, it's tied for the 11th longest touchdown reception in Michigan State's history. So you just see Michigan State's offense breaking these records or, making history in these games. And, in doing so too, the Spartans on Saturday had 595 yards of total offense. And then the week prior against Northwestern, it was a little over 500, I believe, total offense as well. And so why not? I mean, they feel as though why not keep it going against the 24th ranked team in all the land? MSU would certainly make a statement, as we've mentioned, if being able to put up those kinds of numbers against the Canes. But here's the thing. Do they view it that way? Is this a statement game for Thorne and his teammates?
Yeah, I would say so for sure. And I think, too, they kind of a little bit of a blessing in disguise, the Youngstown State game, having that scheduled right before and them coming out as hot as they were, because they were able to get a lot of different guys in there into the rotations. I think on both sides of the ball. I think we saw a lot of Jordan Simmons, and he looked fantastic. So, and Mel Tucker's been talking about, leading up to this for weeks, just how hot it's going to be and how tough that's going to be and how they're going to need to play as many guys as possible. So having that Youngstown State matchup with guys getting in there that maybe not otherwise wouldn't have in a closer ball game, allowing the depth to kind of take over that game, especially in the second half, I think that bodes well too for Michigan State, because this is going to be a game where you're going to need to cycle in guys quite a bit with that Florida heat. It's
going to be really hot down there. They have been preparing for it ever since the beginning of fall camp. They've been cranking up the temperatures inside of the Duffy Doherty practice building. We were privy to it one of the first weeks. It was so hot in there. Can't imagine, then you add on their pads and everything else that goes along with it. But yeah, I do want to play the clip from Peyton Thorne from practice about the statement game as well. And so we'll play that for you right now, what he had to say and how he views whether or not this is a statement game for MSU.
You try to make a statement every week, no matter who the opponent is. You try to go out there and play your best football, and you prepare every week like it's a statement game, But you're trying to make a statement every week that you play and every opportunity that you get to play a game. So, yeah, I guess so.
He guesses so. I like that mentality, though, that he has, the approach of it. But I think that's very much, a culture and standard that Michigan State, Mel Tucker, and the coaching staff have implemented over these last couple of years, is that, you should be putting your best foot forward, no pun intended, when you're on the field every day. It doesn't matter if you're playing an opponent like Youngstown State or Miami, who's ranked. And Manny Diaz, Miami's head coach, he spoke on Monday. That's when, he held his weekly press conference to preview this game against Michigan State. And he brought up Peyton Thorne. He's very impressed. He brought up Michigan State's offense, but he was primarily impressed with Peyton Thorne and how he's able to conduct himself out on the field. And he also said that he thinks that Michigan State is playing as good as anybody right now in the country. And that's a pretty big it's a pretty big thing to say, too, when it comes to Michigan State. But, essentially they are. Now, this game, too, in terms of the rankings, in terms of top 25 in the AP, after this week, Michigan State had received 44 votes in the AP poll, which out of the top 25, they're the fourth. It's the fourth most votes out of any team. So they really have a really good shot here, if they do get a win in Miami, to be thought of as a team that should be ranked in the top 25.
I think there's no question. If they win against Miami, it's not fluky and it's pretty convincing. I think there's no doubt that they'll be into the top 25. And this is a huge game just from a national perspective, too, because I think there's going to be a lot of eyes watching. I think a lot of interest in Miami. No matter what side of the fence you are, either rooting for them to succeed or to fail, because they have a lot of people in that boat too. So I think there's going to be a lot of eyes on this game, and if you can go out and impress, it'll be it'll be obviously a big win for this season, but I think a big win for the long-term success for this program in terms of the recruiting front and just the national perception that people have.
Well, it never hurts to get a win down south. Is that appropriate to say that? I feel like that's weird to say down south, but it's always, from a recruiting standpoint, because Michigan State is trying to, get more players from Florida, Georgia, to come up and play at Michigan State. And so when you're able to put on a performance or play down there in that area, just like you said, more eyes are on it. It is going to be nationally televised on ABC. It's a noon game, so that brings more eyes and more attention. Some updates when it comes to certain players who may be making the trip or may not be making the trip. So Elijah Collins, Mel Tucker said at his press conference when it comes to him, because he injured himself during that touchdown reception that he had in the game on Saturday, which was a phenomenal drive by him. I mean,
single-handedly,
that whole drive, whole drive was him. 3 carries for 32 yards, and he caps it off with a 20-yard touchdown reception, his first reception of his career in a Spartan uniform, TD reception. And, so he kind of it was like, okay, he obviously, everybody knows what he went through all this last year with COVID and trying to get back on track. He gets back on track. He has that touchdown in that game, and now it looked like he injured himself on that play.
Have we gotten any updates on that?
And
that's one thing I haven't
So
been able to find.
At Tucker's press conference on Tuesday, he was asked about Elijah and his status, and all he said is that he'll be ready when he's ready.
Yeah.
And he mentioned the same thing about Anthony Russo, because there were some rumblings that Russo had left the stadium on Saturday following the game with crutches, but Tucker also didn't comment on that. He just said he'll be ready when he's ready. He said that Elijah was a little sore, but other than that, he didn't give any indication whether or not what was going on with him, if he would be making the trip to Miami. Same thing with Russo, but and then the other 2 players that Drew Jordan and Drew Beasley, he anticipates that maybe that they will play, but he expects them to be ready, but that's all he said.
Yeah, so I think we're also learning a little bit about Mel Tucker and his coaching fashion. I think in season, obviously, he's not gonna be one to give away anything that he doesn't need to give away. I mean, because from a fan standpoint, we want to know, but do we need to know? No. I mean, it really doesn't do anything for us other than make us feel more prepared, I guess, to watch the game in some sense. But
it
really,
just makes you feel special.
Yeah,
Alex.
I guess. But really, all it does is it shows your hand to the other team. I know who's going to be available, and if you don't have to announce that, I wouldn't. I mean, it's kind of like the starting quarterback situation leading up to the first game. Why announce that? I mean, the Pat Fitzgerald did that, and that was kind of puzzling to me. I just don't understand why you would give the other team any type of preparation or any type of material to prepare on if you don't have to. So
I'm all
about that.
Right. And that's sort of Tucker's mindset. Mm-hmm. He is not into giving any information away to the opponent that he doesn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes a lot of sense. So, he said that in the very first press conference when we were asking him about the quarterbacks and who was going to play against Northwestern. And he was just like, listen, he goes, I'm not about this. I'm not about, revealing our hand.
But
and
what
now.
We
have. And, but it makes a lot of sense. The other key piece, I guess, when thinking about Miami as well, is just, going off of this offensive production. If Michigan State can put up the numbers that it has been putting up from an offensive standpoint against Miami, I think that because it's so hard to gauge, and kind of like what Chad was mentioning from the high school level, you play different opponents, so you're not really quite sure how to gauge it. But opening up the season against Northwestern, that's a good opponent. That's a Big Ten conference opponent. Youngstown State, obviously smaller school, but still they have good athletes. But, you're kind of riding this wave. So the Miami game really is probably going to be the first, okay, if you can get a win here, then sky could be the limit this season.
Yeah, it's kind of puzzling to me, too, this, the overall the perception, I guess, from most fans with this Northwestern win. From most of what I'm reading is people are downplaying it, kind of thinking like Northwestern, it's not, that doesn't really, mean anything, or that's not a big. But I think we're forgetting that they were in the Big Ten championship game just 1 year ago, gave Ohio State a pretty darn good fight. Their only loss to Michigan State, obviously with an impressive win against Wisconsin, and then winning in the Citrus Bowl against Auburn. It's like, they're 1 year. That wasn't 3 or 4 years ago.
Right.
That was last season. I mean, there's still question marks. They lost their quarterback, obviously, so they might be taking a step down. But this idea that Northwestern is just like some uncompetitive bottom feeder in the Big Ten, I just don't buy that. I mean, I think the Northwestern win was as impressive as you could have in the opening season for any of the Big Ten teams, and it just kind of confuses me as to why that isn't considered a good win by most people. I think, a year removed from the Big Ten championship, yeah, you lost your quarterback, Peyton Ramsey, but it's still, a lot of those guys are still there, and I just think that was a quality win by no stretch.
It was, for sure, and for all the reasons that you just mentioned, and I don't think, Northwestern might be down from last year, but still a very good quality win. And the other thing, too, that probably people have been noticing or fans have been noticing is just the variety of Michigan State's offense. And I think that is something that will continue to get even stronger, will get better. I think we've just only seen probably like a little bit of Jay Johnson's ability in his play calls and what they have, what they're working with. And some people were concerned because, Kenneth Walker had that phenomenal performance in the opener. And then they were like, well, he only had one touchdown on Saturday against Youngstown State. Well, Michigan State is very versatile this year. They have an offense where they can throw it and they can run it. So, if my thought process behind it was that, maybe rest him a little bit, don't work him like a dog every single game if you don't have to. It's just kind of like.
Oh, if they wanted Kenneth Walker to rush for another 200 yards in the Youngstown State game, they would have very well done that. So like you said, they didn't need to lean on him. So there's no reason to. I mean, he got a little bit of run, but I think in a game like that where you feel and you see with your two eyes how much of a push you're getting, and you feel comfortable about that game, there's no reason to run your best guy out there, especially leading into the Miami game. I mean, he's going to be leaned on in this one. I can guarantee it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, for sure. He will be, absolutely. And the other one thing I just want to point out quickly is the atmosphere inside of Spartan Stadium on Saturday was something that everybody, I think, really had missed. And it was so cool to see. So Jim Tressel was on the sideline, and Mark D'Antonio was down there, and obviously Tom Izzo and the current Michigan State men's basketball team. The women's basketball team, Susie Merchant, was down there. And the whole falderall of the day, everybody was hugging everybody. Everybody was it was like they were so happy to be back to normal and to see everybody again. And the student section, I mean, it was half full, probably with 40 minutes left before kickoff. So that tells you something right there too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, but I guess the $1 million question is is Michigan State going to score on the first play again? If they do that again, I'm going to lose my mind. There's no way, right? There's no way. But I think this is a game where, you got to come out and you're going to try to punch them in the mouth. I think this is a team in Miami that will be vulnerable to that. So I think coming out of the gates hot is going to be important. I don't think you necessarily need to score on the very first play, but I'd love to see it. But I don't think that's necessary. But I think this is a game where you definitely want to hit the ground running, because I think Miami, if you can get ahead, 7 or 10 out of the gate, I think it'll be a team that's pretty vulnerable going forward.
Yeah, the fast start is crucial. And, they wanted to have a fast start against Youngstown State, which they did. Wanted to have a fast start against Northwestern, which they did. And so they will, I would imagine that they will start fast again, or at least try to. But if they pop off another touchdown on the first play from scrimmage, are going to lose their minds.
Yeah, I'm going to lose my mind for sure.
Alex is going to be the one losing his mind for sure. Of course, Tucker was asked about that on Tuesday as well, and he's like, "It's Tuesday," and you think too, if he's not going to reveal any of that. He's certainly not going to reveal a play call of what's going to happen on the opening play from scrimmage, right, to start the game. But I think it's just kind of the expectation right now. And, the players, when they were asked about it at practice yesterday, they just kind of were like, well, we wanted to start fast.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're going to try to score the first play. I can guarantee they're going to try. I mean, you don't try not to, but
right.
I would be interested to know if, the flea flicker, obviously you're planning on a big play, but was it like, do we want to run the flea flicker because we're trying to score on the first play of the game? Like, I wonder if that was the incentive, or was it like I just want to catch them napping with the flea flicker? Like, I wonder if it was the play or the result that they were more inclined on. Like what do we need to run to score on the first play, or are we just going to run? Do we want to run the flea flicker? I wonder if the first play, if that was a big incentive or not. But I love to see it. Love to see it.
The former is what it was.
Yeah, you're probably right.
All right. Well, I hope everybody has a great rest of your Thursday. And a lot of fun talking about Michigan State football, as well as all of our high school teams who are gearing up for another big week as well. Enjoy the day, and we'll see you soon.